We live, ladies and gentlemen. You once again welcome to the King Dems Podcast. And today I have with me fighting out of New York, USA, the reigning undefeated best developmental psychologist in the world, and the CEO founder of the Mentor Project. Make welcome Deborah Heiser. How are you, Deborah?
Doing well after that introduction. Wow. That was the best introduction ever.
Oh, wow, wow, wow. I was talking about the UFC with you, and of course, you're like, oh, you're not into UFC. You have to be into UFC. That is, a Bruce Buffer introduction. You know, like I was telling somebody yesterday, I love the UFC so much, but it's so funny how I kind of enjoy the announcements more than the fights.
I could see why.
So, like, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, uh, if you get introduced like that, there's no way you're not going to be pumped. And of course, I hope we have some adrenaline rushing in you
I'm
right now.
totally now.
Okay, that's nice. I hope I've got you pumped, and I hope I've got you gassed. And in the UK, in London specifically, if you are driving in central London and you are not using an electric vehicle, you would have to pay congestion charges. So I guess you would have to pay congestion charges because you haven't gassed up now. So, let's talk about your story in a snapshot. Can you give us a brief background on what inspired you to become an applied developmental psychologist and how your journey led to founding the Mentor Project?
Sure. So I wasn't a little kid saying, "Ooh, I want to grow up and be a psychologist of any form." I didn't know what that was even, but it started because I was about 19 or 20 and I went to visit my grandmother, and I really loved my grandmother. She was super fun. And she was the kind of grandma that wore cute clothes. So when I went down to visit her, all I had to bring was shoes because she always had clothes to put on. And one time I went down to visit her and she was not herself. She was disheveled. She was grouchy. And so I said to somebody, there's something wrong with grandma. And they said, don't worry, we're going to fix her. And I was like, what do you mean? And they said, well, she's taking a medication for she had a lung problem for her lungs and it's not agreeing with her. So it's making her depressed. I didn't even know what depression was, but I was
Wow.
like, okay, I'll come back in a couple months and see her and I'll see what she's like. Well, she was completely better when I went back to visit her. They fixed my grandma.
Hmm.
So
Sounds mechanical.
I know well, that's kind of how they presented it. And I was kind of like, I didn't know what a psychologist was. I didn't know what any of this at all was. I just knew my grandma was back to herself. She was back to the fun lady. She always was. So I said, I want to be a grandma fixer.
Hmm.
And so I switched my major and I became I got a psychology degree. I went into work in a psychiatric hospital on the geriatric unit so that I could get experience and see if I wanted to do research and work with older adults. And I said, yeah, this is it. This is what I want to do. I went on for my PhD and never looked back. I've really always now, looked at psychology and aging as something that excites me. So that was really how I got into becoming an applied developmental psychologist, was because of my grandma.
So I did listen to your podcast with the Good Life show, and you were talking about how when you go to a cocktail party and you say you're an aging expert, it feels like a conversation that starts off on the wrong foot.
Boy, does it. I can tell you that when I first got out of graduate school and I was a researcher, I was looking at everything no one wants to have or get, like depression and frailty and Alzheimer's and all the end of life issues that people are afraid of. So I would go to a cocktail party and somebody would say, oh, and what do you do? And I'd say, I'm an aging specialist. And their eyes would glaze over and they'd be like looking around the room to make the great escape from this very boring person. And so that made me not love going to cocktail parties because I always felt like people were trying to avoid me. So, yes, I was studying all of those things. And then I went to a dinner party. And in true style, I wasn't a quick learner. I went there excited to tell everyone all about what I did. And I thought everyone was going to be receptive. I had a new book coming out all about palliative care, which is how you care for people when they're preparing to die. And I thought, great, everyone's going to love hearing what I do. And I get there, no one is excited, just like they were at every cocktail party. And one person sitting across from me said, you know, what do we have to look forward to as we get older? You're doing all of this work that is about stuff no one wants to have or get. It's like you're putting a band-aid on terrible things we have to look forward to. And I was stumped. I didn't have an answer for him. And so I kind of left that dinner party saying, I need to take a look at myself and take a look at my work and see what I want to look forward to, because it wasn't what I was studying. And so I went back to the drawing board and I realized that there was so much research already out there and so many psychological theories that were out there on everything we have to look forward to that is amazing. It just wasn't making it to the media, only like the scary things were. So I started to look at those generational life stages that we go through and what we can look forward to. And part of that was to look at mentorship in our midlife stage, which is called generativity, where we have an innate desire, just like walking and talking, to give back to others without expecting something in return. And I thought, wow, this is fascinating. I have to learn more. And that was the first time I really pivoted and sort of left my other research in the background and moved towards what we have to look forward to.
Interesting. So, just on a lighter note, since the cocktail parties haven't really quite worked well for you, I think you should consider a mocktail party because I make some of the best mocktails in the world. I can make you a virgin mojito, and of course, you like it.
I love mojitos, so I would love a virgin mojito.
Okay, definitely. I could hit you with one. You just have to come to the other side of the pond, and we'll be happy to host you in London, England. Just, heads up, the weather is not, the best in the world, but the
Well,
people can be.
yeah, I'm sure that the people make up for it, but I will come and promise not to talk about all of the negative things that we have to look forward to, only the positive things.
Okay, we'll see. We'll see. So, aging and mindset, many people fear aging, but you emphasize its opportunities. How can we shift our perception of aging to embrace aging positively?
So it really is part of what I learned along the way is that we were looking only at our physical journey. So that's scary to most of us because we have a very steep incline in our physical abilities and then a slow, steady decline as we get older. And it doesn't go back up, it just continues to go down. And so that's what I was presenting to everybody at these cocktail parties and everywhere else was this thing that scares everyone. No wonder they didn't want to be around me. So, but when I finally looked at our emotional trajectory, it starts at the same place and it goes up and it never goes down. So we can expect to be happier as we get older. So I tell my students all the time, I wear these reading glasses, but you can outrun me, but I'm happier than you. So really, even though I'm declining a little and I have to wear reading glasses, my students who are 20 can outrun me. It doesn't matter. I'm still really happy. And I'm happier than I was when I was in my 20s. And research shows that that is very typical. That is the trajectory that we have. So what we have along our journey is a lot of emotional opportunities where doors open for us and we feel fulfilled and we feel good. We find out who we are and we see, ooh, I kind of like that. It feels much better than we were in that place where we were like, what does my future hold? There's a lot of anxiety with that. So we have a lot of really good opportunities rather than challenges when we're thinking about our emotional state as we go through our lifespan.
You mentioned the power of mentorship. What pivotal mentorship moments have shaped your own life and your own career?
I have two. One was when I was 5, and most of us can't think back that far, but this is really one thing that helped shape my career. Not just, my grandmother who I wanted to become a grandma fixer, but I used to go every Saturday morning with my grandfather on car rides. I was the oldest grandchild, and he would take me out to give my mom a break, and I went on all of his errands with him. And as we would drive, he would tell me stories about the people that we would pass on the streets. And he'd say, "Oh, you see Mary over there? She's had a hard life. She put her kids through college and she did it all on her own." And he would go on and say these things. And then he'd say, "Oh, you see that guy on the bench? Oh, yeah, his wife just chewed him out for not taking in the dry cleaning." And, so he'd tell me all these stories. And I thought, wow, I was 5. I figured he knew them all and how unbelievable that he could tell me these stories. But what he was telling me every time we met was, everyone has a story. Every person you pass isn't just a face or, what they're presenting to you. They have a whole deep story and it's often complicated and there's a lot to it. Well, I always, after that, looked at a person and wondered what their story was. I wondered what they had inside of them that I was going to get to learn about. And that's what you need if you're going to be a psychologist, is to have that curiosity about a person and how they think and feel. And so he was really my first mentor that I can remember teaching me that. And if I were to think later about another mentor, it was one of my college undergraduate professors. And she gave me really hard advice. I was working my way through college and I would meet with her after school, after outside of the classroom. Like, she had a baby and I went to visit the baby. And, so I wasn't just being advised by her. She was really, taking me under her wing and outside of just, being a professor. And
That's
she said
proper mentorship.
yeah, it was. So she said to me one day, "You're not doing great in school and you're complaining about how you're not doing great outside of school." I was kind of riding the fence. I wasn't doing bad in anything, but I wasn't doing great in anything. And she was like, "So why don't you just quit if you're not going to put your all into it and do everything for it?" So that was a wake up call for me. And that mentorship made me pivot like nobody's ever pivoted before. I put my all into school. I would be up until all hour. I'd work, go to school, and then like study all night and then get it back up and do it the next day. I didn't allow myself to sort of feel bad about myself working and going to school and taking a break to sort of give myself an easy time and say, "Oh, you deserve this." No, head down, got the work done. And that was true mentorship, because she really did tell me, you have to put in effort for the things that you want. You can't just wait for life to hand you something on a platter. You got to work for it. And I did. And I really flourished after that.
Speaking of the power of psychology, what role does psychology play in achieving fulfillment, success, especially in midlife and beyond?
So in midlife, that's this magical stage. We've already figured out who we are all the way up into our 30s. We're still figuring out who we are. We might have career changes, ideas, and switching our friend groups and moving and doing all of these things, figuring out who our people are, what we want to do, who we feel as ourselves. Once we've really gotten good at stuff that we feel it is part of who we are and our identity, and figured out who our people are. Maybe we have a partner, maybe we even have children. By the time we hit midlife, we have a little bit more bandwidth and we say to ourselves, wow, I just checked a whole lot of boxes in my life. Now I want to be able to give some of that to the world. So I feel like my footprint is a little deeper than it is right now. And it's not necessarily thinking of legacy, like somebody saying, "Oh, I want people to remember my name." It's feeling like, do I matter? And am I relevant? Am I useful? Am I someone who is important in the everyday life? And that's what we hit in midlife. And we then have this desire to give back. And we do that either through philanthropy, volunteering, or mentoring. But mentoring is the only one that we take an actual piece of ourselves. Like if you said, hey, I want to teach you about podcasting. I have all of this great communication skill I'd like to pass on to you. That is a piece of you that will then live on me if I say, you know what? Yeah, I'd love that. I'd love to learn that. So that's what we hit in midlife. And it's incredibly gratifying to have that feeling that somebody wants your knowledge, culture, values, skills, expertise, and that they're holding on to that and moving it forward.
When you're talking about the point at which you begin to think about your relevance, it reminded me of the Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So at the base, you have the physiological needs, and next, when those physiological needs are met, you have the safety needs, and after the safety needs, you now have the the love and belonging needs, and then self-esteem, and the peak of the pyramid is self-actualization. So it seems like a lot of people tend to conquer the lower parts of that pyramid and struggle to achieve the peak, which is that self-actualization and fulfillment. You also touched on our identity, and something I realize or I observe as a social scientist in society is I observe that a lot of people suffer from an identity crisis. People don't really know who they are. And it would have been fine if, they just don't know who they are. They also try to place labels on people, and I feel that is totally unfair. And in my case, I say have issues with, certain individuals trying to label me a particular kind of thing. But I think because I am a mentally strong individual, I was able to resist that. People in society want to put you in a box, but I say it's not for you to tell me who I am. I know who I am, and of course, I'm a Christian, right? The Bible says, "As a man thinketh in his heart, so is he," right? So basically, I believe that my identity is not to be shaped by another human being, right? And that actually leads me into the concept of quarter life crisis and midlife crisis. So I'd like for you to touch on those subjects because identity is key in order for you to be able to achieve that self-actualization that is the top of the hierarchy of needs.
You're right. When we're young, between like 15 and in our 30s, and this is flexible, right? This timeline, it's not like one day you are like, I'm going to search for my identity. It's a process and it's our own personal identity. So, like you said, nobody can put you in the box. You have to put yourself in that box, right? You're searching for your own identity. And that's a process in all the things that we're doing, which is making the friends that we make and going to big events or parties or socializing in big ways. We try to do a lot of this. We try to take different classes or different routes in terms of jobs or anything like that. When we're younger, we're trying to see what is it that resonates with me. So as we're going through all of this is a time that is very exciting, but it's also kind of a little anxiety provoking for people because people say, am I going to land where I'm supposed to land? Who am I right now? You don't know quite who you are because you're not supposed to yet. You're finding your identity. So as you go through the identity stage and you're finding out what kind of job you're going to have and who your friends are and the hobbies you have and all of those things, you start to move forward. And as you're doing that, you're sloughing off some of your superficial friends that don't matter as much to you and spending more time with the people that do. You might even find work takes up time. So you can't hang out as much as you did when you were younger. So there's some people there that you're not going to be hanging out with as much. Then you might find a partner, right? Somebody that you're dating. And then you have less time for some of those other superficial people who kind of made the cut before. Now they're not making the cut. And that gets smaller and smaller, and you get really quality in your life versus quantity. So what people may say, oh, I don't have as many friends as I did before. You're not supposed to. It's supposed to be quality, not quantity. It's that whole sphere is getting smaller until it's a nice tight ball of the people that you want in your life. So part of your identity is that you're choosing the people, places, and things that matter to you. And so a person could say this is a crisis, or they could say it's a lot of opportunities to figure out who I am and try new things and do a lot. So once you hit that could be your quarter, crisis. But then when you hit the midlife, this is a time when some people say, wow, I see a ton of doors in front of me. You'll see people that will become really active out. They'll retire, or they'll prepare to retire, and they start up their own entrepreneurial endeavors. Other people will say, oh my goodness, my whole identity is my job. It's my, I call it an identity card. It's not a business card anymore. That's our identity. And they weren't able to really expand beyond that job to other things to see where else their identity is that's important to them. So you will hear about the empty nest syndrome, where a person only identifies with being a parent. And when the children leave, they feel like, who am I now if I'm not a mom or a dad? So these sorts of things are normal for all of us to go through. And these transitions are the times when we might feel that unease or that anxiety, where we say, uh-oh, there's something new here. My comfort level is being shaken up a little. But is there an actual real crisis there? No, it's really, they should be calling it sort of a transition time instead of a crisis, and filled with opportunity. If we are able to see the opportunities that are in front of us, it makes us feel better about going through doors that open in front of us instead of seeing those as hurdles in front of us.
So, speaking of hurdles, a lot of people are usually afraid, and I have an acronym for the word fear. I call it false evidences appearing real.
Mhm.
So, a lot of people suffer from FOMO. A lot of people suffer from fear of the unknown, and it has a way of restricting people's ability to push for something big beyond themselves in life. But what makes me really upset is when you see another person that is ambitious, that is pushing for something big, and you're trying to pull them down or trying to discourage them, from going for it. It irritates me, just to put it lightly. So I'll give you an example. When I started this podcast just 1 year, 3 months ago, and when I was about to start, a couple of individuals who were like, "Oh, you are a chartered accountant. Like, what business does a chartered accountant have with podcasting? Why should you do that?" And it was crazy that the lady I was dating at the time even discouraged me and like, "No, this is not meant for you. You're meant to be a finance guy." And I told her, "You are not to tell me who I am. It is for me to decide who I am. Nobody has any right, not even my parents, right? They brought me to the world to tell me who I am. It's between myself and my God, right?" And I wonder how people who are not mentally strong have actually not chased their dreams, because some people pull you down and tear you down, right? And at some point, I ruminated about it and thought about it like, sometimes some of these people don't say these things out of a bad intention. Some of these people say it because they are not ambitious themselves. They are scared, of trying out new things because they're scared of failing, right? So because they're scared of failing, they're scared that you also might fail. But when I was in university, there was a saying that was quite popular, in my uni: if we try, we may fail. But if we don't, we have failed. So that actually gives you that braveness, the courage to always push for something. And if you don't push for something in life, you will never really discover your true identity. So I don't know if you can touch on why people have a limiting mindset, a fixed mindset, instead of adopting a growth mindset.
I can't answer why people don't have a growth mindset, but I'll say this, and my dad told me this when I was young. He said, surround yourself with people who want to succeed and who you hope succeed. Because when you're surrounding yourself with successful people or people who are trying to do things, new things, make things happen, make the world a better place, everyone wins. You are not at a loss if someone else is doing well. You run your own race. It's your own journey. So if you're hearing people who aren't excited for you or who are putting you down, is that going to be good for your journey? Probably not. And it doesn't matter about their journey. Let them go have their limited journey, right? You stick to yours and make sure that you're surrounding yourself with people who you can say, wow, look at all of the success that I'm seeing. And it doesn't have to be success as a high paying job. It could be success in terms of somebody saying, wow, I've surrounded myself with all these amazing people who care about me. Wow, I'm surrounding myself with activities that make me really fulfilled. It can be all sorts of things along that journey. So, in my opinion, if you see somebody or around people who are saying, don't feel pleasure in the things that you're putting as part of your identity, look hard at that because it's your journey in the end and you have to be on it. So, you don't have to put yourself in that box.
Okay, so I want to present something to you real quick. It's from a book called Septemics, written by Jim Marshall. Jim Marshall was the last guest on this podcast. So, okay, just a moment. Let me try to bring his scale of basic function on the screen. So let me know if you can see it.
I can, yeah.
Okay, so this scale is called the scale of basic purposes. So, according to Jim Marshall, human beings operate within one of these seven, steps within the scale. So, at the highest, you have the saints, and next, you have the leaders. So, saints and leaders are superhuman, and they form just about 8.8% of the population and 8.4% of the population. Now we have the winners. Those are people who are highly ambitious, they go for wealth. Then you have the normal people, right? The normal people are those who are conformists. And of course, they form the majority part of the population. That is 28.9%. See that? You have the losers. They form 20.4% of the population. So we can see that most people just want to conform. They don't want to be better. They don't want to be worse. And, when you're telling me about the story about your mentor, the lecturer you had in uni, I feel like she was able to help you achieve, a realization that helped you to move up the ladder from normal to being a winner. Became ambitious all of a sudden, right? So
Yeah.
he says sometimes human beings, experience certain transformations that helps them, go up. And of course, you could also have a negative transformation that could help make you go down, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you have the losers, you have the criminals, you have the subversive. But I am focusing on the normal and the losers. Okay, let's focus on the humans, right? The winners, the normal, and the losers, right? So losers typically are not ambitious, right? And of course, they keep losing. But it seems like a lot of them want to drag the winners and the normals down to their level. But you have the leaders who always want to drag people up, right? In your work in psychology, how can you help individuals, or what advice do you have for individuals that are, normal winners, right? To prevent that unfortunate instance of influence from the losers, right? From
So
bringing them down.
I don't look at things as comparing. I personally don't like to say, hey, compare yourself to others, because then you're not on your
Fantastic.
journey.
I love
You're
that.
on a journey with a bunch of other people.
I love
And then
that.
you're going to slide into theirs, they're going to slide into yours. And the thing that is most important is to know that a person's journey is their journey, and that's for them. If you wanted to be an accountant, that's your journey. And if you liked that and wanted to do that, that's great. And if the person next to you said, no, 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 I want to be a baker and this is my journey and this is what I want to do, is one better than the other? No, they're
No,
not. There's one person has a journey to do what they want to do and the other one has the journey to do what they want to do. So who am I to say your journey is wrong or you're not a winner in some way? I can only say, what do you want and where do you want to go? And how does that align with your identity? How does that align with how you feel as a person in the world? How do you want your legacy to look? What kind of footprint do you want to make in the world? The rest of this stuff is irrelevant. It's really, when you get down to it, it isn't the job that the person does. It's the connections and the difference that they make in the world. So you
the
could be
impact.
Exactly. So you could make an enormous amount of impact as someone who is a baker. You could make very little impact if you're an accountant or in finance. That job is nothing other than a way of making money. So our journeys are really emotional and how we are able to feel fulfilled. And everybody gets that a little bit differently. In terms of how we do it, we go about it in very similar ways, but I don't know what your inner feelings are and what your aspirations are and what makes you feel like this is going to make me feel fulfilled. And if you're really motivated in some way, that's where I would try to push you, right? Just like that teacher saw in me that I was struggling. And it was because I wasn't putting my foot in any direction that was leading me anywhere. I was standing still. And was I getting by? Yes. But she said, move it forward. And it was my journey. It didn't matter to her what area that I was going to go into, aging or research or whatever. She didn't care about that. She just said, go follow what you want and just do it. And that's kind of how we have to think about it, in my opinion, when we're talking with people, that we need to respect what their identity is and what they want to get out of life and then help them to get there.
Well said. I appreciate that. So, talking about generativity, you talk about this concept. So, what is it and why is it crucial in personal and professional growth?
Well, when we hit midlife, most people, I remember being young and I thought, well, once you hit midlife, you're just kind of coasting the rest of your life. Like, what else is there? You've already got your job or your career. You have your friends and family. What else is there? And it's really the beginning point of our emotional journey and fulfillment stage. So, generativity, as I mentioned before, is really the stage where we're caring for others without expecting anything in return. And that's really, if I were to give a visual, it's we're taking in and taking in. If you're filling a jar with information, people, experiences, expertise, wisdom, culture, values, all of this, it gets full. By midlife, you're like, okay, I've checked a lot of boxes, I'm full. Now you want to open the lid of the jar and let some of it out. Because otherwise, you're irrelevant if you have a closed jar the whole time. You sat there and you were just a full jar. So we have the need and desire to give that back so we can see ourselves living on in others, so we can see impact that came from us, not from someone else. So when you're working in a job, that's somebody else's, you're making impact in that, but is that your personal impact? People might not think so. But you do when you're mentoring, when you're volunteering, or you're engaged in philanthropy, which are all the three legs of generativity. So if you're saying, wow, I just made impact in some program, I donated money to it, I now know that that is making the impact in an area that I wanted. I feel good. I feel fulfilled. I know that my footprint just got a little deeper. If I go volunteer at a soup kitchen and I feel like, wow, I just gave out food and beverage to hungry, thirsty people, and I now feel good, my footprint got deeper. If I mentor someone and they carry on a little bit of my culture, my knowledge, my value, my religion, my expertise from work, my footprint just got deeper. Religion is passed for centuries. That's mentorship. You didn't just wake up one day and you were like presented with a new insight. That's been passed down from an expert to somebody else to somebody else. All the traditions that you have at home, that nobody just made that up one Tuesday. That's been passed down. The value that you hold, that you say, this is part of who I am, that didn't just pop up out of somebody didn't mail that to you. You open up, say, oh, good, a value. You've been cultivating that all of your life. And so those are the things that we especially love to pass on, because we say, this is a tradition. I'm going to pass it on to my children, my grandchildren, or nieces and nephews, or people in the community, or wherever else. So if you have a pastor or a minister or someone in your life, or an imam, or if you have a rabbi, whoever it is out there, that is someone who's mentoring people and passing on culture. So midlife is that time when we feel that pull to do that, because our cup is full and we're trying to what we've accumulated and think is important out into the world and to others.
Thank you very much for such deep insights. Mentorship, a lot of people have misconceptions about the concept of mentorship. So, based off your wealth of experience, what are the biggest misconceptions people have about the concept of mentorship?
Oh, there are a few. I really felt compelled to write the book that I just wrote because so many people are misusing the term. It really got hijacked by corporate settings as a work thing. Like, you get assigned to be a mentor. To me, that is not how mentorship works. And that's not how research says it works or the theory says it works. That's a burden. It's like instead of going to a soup kitchen to give out food and beverage, somebody sends you to Starbucks and everybody else is getting paid and you're doing it for nothing. It's that same good deed of doing something, but there's a different extrinsic motivator attached to it. So what most people are thinking of is that mentorship is something where you're supposed to grab something from some nameless, faceless person called a mentor above you, and they're going to help you get a better job. And that's really not how mentorship works. Mentorship is mentor focused. People have expertise and they get to choose who they're going to give that wisdom, that value, that expertise, that culture, whatever it is, to someone. They need a willing recipient. So the mentor, it's like an apple tree has apples, and saying, here, take an apple. And somebody can either walk by and say, I want that apple, or they say, no, I don't want an apple, I want a peach, something like that. So mentorship, it has 5 key components to it. And it often looks like mentorship in the workplace, but it's like baking brownies. If you leave the sugar out, it'll look like brownies, but it won't taste like brownies. So you first need generativity. Somebody says, I want to give something back to you. And then you have to have somebody that says, I want what you're giving. If you don't have that, it's not mentoring. It also has to be an intrinsically motivated relationship. I have to want to give to you without expecting pay, a reward, you to go tell everybody I'm your mentor, or some kind of certificate or anything else. It has to be because I want to see you grow and develop with something I give to you. You're carrying a little bit of me in you. The next thing that it needs is to be a meaningful connection. If you don't like me, we're not in a mentoring relationship because you're just putting your time in with me. And likewise with me, with you, the mentor and the mentor both have to like each other. And they also have to trust each other. So if you're in the workplace, let's just give the example of work, and I think you're going to steal my idea. I'm the mentor, and I say, I'm not going to tell this mentee anything. They're going to run off and steal my idea and go start their own company. That's not mentorship. Likewise, if I'm a mentee and I say, I'm not going to tell him everything that I don't know, he'll never give me a raise. I'll never get a promotion. He'll think I'm stupid. I'm not going to tell them that. That's not mentoring. And finally, there needs to be a goal. So that could be a very small goal. It could be show me the lay of the land. It could be I have a goal of making sure that the next generation has a certain value that I hold, and as a mentee, it could be I want to learn from you how to do podcasting or whatever it is. Teach me everything you know. I can't wait to learn it. So if you're missing one of those, it's not mentoring. So when people, I really get so tired of hearing people say, I have a toxic mentor. No, that's not a mentor. There's no such thing as a toxic mentor. It's just not a mentor. You have a toxic person in your life and you're calling them a mentor, but a mentor is someone that has to have those 5 things that I talked about. A mentee has to have those 5 things I talked about. If it's not there in one of those capacities, it's just not mentorship. So that's really what I'm excited to talk about, is that mentoring is organic. It's all around us. You don't need a handbook. When you meet a friend, you don't say, hold on, let me check number 3, 4, 5, make sure that we have these things in place. You organically decide if you like the person. You want to hang out a little more. You want to do something new. If you meet the person, you say, ooh, that person's going to throw me under the bus next time. You don't hang out with them. It's the same with mentorship. You always need to operate organically without a thing in the background that's driving it.
Your body of work actually, speaks about lateral and hierarchical mentorship. So you have spoken about these mentorship models, but can you explain their differences and when each of these mentorship models is more effective?
Yeah, absolutely. Hierarchical mentoring is the kind when somebody says, I want to get a mentor, they're usually thinking hierarchical, that they're looking for somebody who's going to pull them up in their job. But that's just a small part of our mentoring. The mass majority of our mentoring and the most impactful mentoring is lateral mentoring. And so that's if you look to your left and you look to your right. It's not your boss. It's not somebody that has anything to do with you and your job or anything like that. It's you talking to another expert in a different area. So if you're a hardware engineer, you might need mentorship from a software engineer. And if you are somebody who, like for instance, me, I'm a psychologist. I need business mentoring all the time from people because I didn't learn that. I need to get mentorship in that. So people who are entrepreneurs, they don't have bosses. It's all lateral mentoring. If you are talking about tech, it's all lateral mentoring. Every big, huge impact that we've had in technology has been based on lateral mentoring. 2 engineers coming together, or people of different backgrounds in engineering and marketing that come together to make somebody's idea turn into a big movement, things like that. So lateral mentoring is everywhere around us. And it's particularly important to know about that because if you're in a hierarchical environment, it's very intimidating for people to say, I'm going to go look for a mentor. It's awkward. People are like, how do I start that conversation? What do I do? I feel vulnerable. I don't trust the people above me to be vulnerable because I don't know them. Are they going to hold it against me? All these different things. But you don't feel that way when you're looking laterally. So if you're in a hospital setting, you're not going to go and say, ooh, I'm doing a new surgery today. I have no idea how to do it. That's not going to work out well. But you can turn to somebody that is another surgeon or doctor and say, hey, I know you've seen a few cases like this. What did you do? How did you handle that? And then you get into a dialogue and that person exchanges their expertise and information with you and you take it in and then you go do what you were going to do. That happens all the time in hospital settings. Those are grand rounds, those are curbside consults. We see that in legal settings. In the United States, a group of federal judges got together. You can't say, if you're a judge, I don't know how to try that case. You'll never hold your job, but you can do what they did in one court system, was where they had lunches for the judges. So you could turn and say, "Oh, Jim, I know you had a case like this. Can you tell me how that worked out?" And that's lateral mentoring. It feels natural. You trust the person. You're not exposing your vulnerabilities in a way that are going to make you seem like you shouldn't be promoted. And they also don't have the ability to promote or not promote you. They don't have any impact on you in that way. So that's how a lot of us get around the real hierarchical aspects of things, is just by lateral mentoring and getting the trust and the meaningful connections to work with us when we're trying to do something new.
One of my favorite quotes is, "There is no success without a successor."
Mm.
So mentorship is regarded as a legacy tool.
Yeah.
So how does mentorship contribute to personal legacy, and why should people, especially in leadership, embrace it more actively?
I think that people need to embrace it more actively because we all want to matter and have meaning. And we see this, at least in the United States, I don't know how it is in England or anywhere else, but we see where they get rid of, maybe higher leadership. And it takes forever for the next group coming up to learn it. It's like they have to reinvent the wheel with new knowledge because they don't have people saying, "Oh, yeah, I've seen this 60 times already. Here's how you avoid that pitfall." So, what happens is when we're getting rid of one level, it's like burning down libraries. All that information goes away, and we take that for granted and we think, "Oh, good, cheaper, younger people." But we aren't realizing that they have to take 3, 4 times longer to get some of the answers that didn't take as long before. So that's how legacy looks in a workplace, right? Is that somebody's knowledge is getting passed down and it makes things quicker, more efficient, and it has bigger impact in more ways. In terms of our personal lives, it's so important to us because imagine if you didn't have some of the important values, traditions, maybe your religion, any of those things that are the grounding things that make us feel like we matter and we're important. Now, imagine if you went out and you didn't take any of that with you, that all of that leaves with you. So we all are out here building legacy, whether that's in our personal lives or in our work lives. We just don't often see it. That's why we will notice things if a very important person in our family or a religious leader or a person who's at the top in a company moves on or they die or something like that happens when we feel like they haven't been able to pass on all the information that we would have liked to have had from them. We feel that loss. We feel that gaping hole that's in there.
It's actually very, very spot on. So, bridging generations, how can mentorship be used to foster better collaboration between different generations, especially in today's rapidly changing world?
Well, we have a world that has a whole lot of tech happening. And I'm tired of.
Sorry to interrupt you. Speaking of tech, I have spoken about this in a couple of previous episodes of this podcast, that tech is actually a big driver of generational wars, especially the generational war between the Gen X and baby boomers versus the Gen Zs. Tech, AI, robotics is driving a very, very crazy world war. And of course, that is the silent World War III that we are not acknowledging.
Well, tech is one of those things that I always say, I'm not as interested in learning that younger people can teach older people tech. Yes, they can. But I'm thinking more in line of what you just said. Okay, so imagine if you look at all the different generations, each one tends to think about things from their own generational perspective, right? And they don't look beyond their generational perspective. So the way that mentorship bridges that is that if I were to say, hey, I want to go run an ad campaign for, I don't know, iPhone use, right? So I am going to want to know what the opinion is of every generation. If I am a Gen Xer, which I am, and I say, hey, I want to, here's how this ad should work, and I don't get the expertise from any other generation, those sales will fail because that's how we got the whole okay boomer saying, was because people weren't taking into consideration other generations' point of view on things. And so the way that mentorship bridges that is that people are taking in from both generations. So if I say, I need to find out what millennials think about something, you millennial person are my mentor in this. I'm going to get that. And that's going to bridge that gap. We are not considering mentorship in many cases as being bidirectional or lateral. We're thinking of it only as a mentee who's pulling from above. And that's part of what I was saying. I feel like it sort of got hijacked by corporate America in many ways because we're not looking at it in any other direction. But it's super beneficial for that.
Very well said. And of course, touching on the generational wars a little bit. You are Gen X. I am a millennial, Generation Y. And I always feel like I am caught up in between the Generation X and the Generation Z. I feel like us millennials are like the diplomats between the Generation X and the Generation Z because you guys are like polarizing figures, seriously polarizing figures. The Generation Z often do not have a little bit of understanding of the thought process and the methodology behind the philosophies of the Generation X. I know you have seen this play out many times, and at some point, it made me feel like I am old, but not too old, and I'm young, but not too young, because I can understand, the value system and the philosophies of the Generation X. And I also understand, the direction in which the Generation Z are coming from. And of course, I grew up with a lot of technological evolution and revolution. When I was younger, I used CDs, cassettes, the VCDs, DVDs, the Pac-Mans, the iPad, the iPod. I just saw that revolution. One technology comes, goes. But it's like the Gen Z actually came out in the peak of the digital revolution. And, that is what they are very, very much used to. So, Generation X, I think you guys need to pay us millennials more to be the peacemakers between for this generational war. And speak. Okay, you want to speak about that?
You, because this has been going on forever. I'm Gen X, and I remember, the boomers are the ones who came out and they had the whole sexual revolution. What was called the greatest generation, who were before them, were like, oh my gosh, what's happening with these young people? And then Gen Xers were seen as like the slacking losers by the previous generations. And so every generation below always feels like, come on, give me some credit here. Or I want to make my mark in some way, and I'm not going to listen to you and what you have to say. And that's because there's not a lot of intergenerational dialogue happening. There's not a lot of respect for an older generation other than pull me up. I want to get to a higher level. And the older generations are like, they better follow my lead. I've been leading all this time. You better follow me. That's where we run into problems in all kinds of things, because without that mentorship where we see people interacting meaningfully, that's why people feel like that. I felt like that. Everybody was like, oh, you want to do a career you want to do instead of the one that you're just supposed to have. Those kinds of things were put on Gen Xers. You're just supposed to, it didn't matter if you liked your job or not, go do your job. And then, the next generation, Gen Xers will say, oh, what they get pleasure in their work. These are the kinds of things that have been playing out generation after generation after generation. It's just a different term or word that's used.
Mm. Hey, so looking forward, right? Retirement and psychological well-being. I remember in your podcast with Michelle, you were talking about the perspective and the perception of old age. About when you Google what an old man is, was about 10 years ago, it wasn't a nice image on the search engines, but times are changing and, we're having happier images. But what are the most exciting aspects of aging that people often overlook?
So it is changing a little bit. So when I started back in the olden days, like in the 90s, looking at aging, it was really negative. That was all that went out there. Everybody was afraid they were going to get Alzheimer's disease. Like that was like something people like thought, oh my gosh, I'm going to catch it. I'm going to have it. They were getting blood tests to see, oh, am I going to get Alzheimer's disease? It was really top of the mind and in a negative way. We move into the thousands and we start to get the internet. So you could Google, like at that time, I don't even know if Google was around, but you could do a search engine and type up old man. And I did that. And the early thousands, like the year 2002 or three, I typed in old man and the thing that came up was Santa Claus. That was it. It was all there was. Image after image of Santa Claus. And I thought, wow, only a fictional character for old man. Then, like 2010, I typed in old man and it was all stuff like frail, the person's going to get robbed, they're going to get scammed, a person in a wheelchair, vulnerable, frail. It was terrible. It was just negative things. And then it started to shift a little bit. I remember being at a dinner gathering and it was Atlantic magazine that was putting it out, this big sort of town hall dinner over what is it that people think about aging. And I remember I wrote to them and they weren't that receptive, but I did start to see change after that. I said, the media has to change the imaging and the stories they're putting about aging. You can't have change in aging if everything a person looks up is negative. And so over time, those images started to change. So if you look at some of the TV characters who were 40, they looked old. I mean, really old. And now if you see a 40-year-old, people look fabulous. They're still seen as sexy. Even 50 can look sexy. Whereas before that was like geriatric. And so if you start to see these things change, I've been able to see that. I also have seen how I look at the actions, not the words over time, and have noticed that, in the United States, we have been electing octogenarians. People are like, oh no, they're too old. Well, they keep electing old people. And that to me is a positive sign because they're putting people up for positions who are in their late 70s or in their 80s. And we're seeing that not only there, but we're seeing people in film like J-Lo's in her 50s and she's still seen as sexy, and other women who are, who have come up and aged are still seen as sexy, even though they're in their 50s and older in many cases. We've also seen newer role models who are stars in television, like they have a show on Netflix that has two women, Grace and Frankie. We have other leading men who are older. And so I'm seeing a lot of change, and which is to me unbelievable because I just look back to the 90s, really the thought was you were done for once you're 40.
Somebody who really, really impresses me with the way he keeps aging like fine wine is Morgan Freeman.
I know. He
I
has the
don't
best
understand that guy.
processing. And Morgan Freeman, I used to watch Sesame Street as a kid, and he was on Sesame Street. I don't know if you know what that is, but it was a children's show. He's been around forever, and his voice has always been magical.
Yeah, and it seems like he's experiencing reverse aging because I see
Yeah.
the picture at 50, I see the picture at 80, and it's like, okay, I don't know, but I'm really happy. I'm really happy for him. So, talking about reinventing retirement. So, we are in an era where retirement is being redefined. How should people approach this stage of life to remain active and fulfilled, and of course, to prevent that post-retirement depression?
Yeah. What we should be doing is thinking about our identity. We think our identity is formed and shaped by the time, we're in our early phase. But we need to rethink that when we're retiring. Is our whole identity our job? Is our whole identity just one aspect of us, being a parent? Is it just one thing? And then saying before we get to retire, or before, I'll even include like empty nest syndrome, all of those things, before an empty nest, start to think of who am I and what do I want out of life? And add that into it, because doing that makes you so you're going to see yourself in a broader way than in just a very narrow way. So that's a time to start. Maybe that's when you want to pivot and do something you never had the time to do before, but now you will have the time. Kids are often grown, you have a little bit more time. If you're going to retire, this is the time to start a business. This is a time when people say, I always wanted to do Habitat for Humanity or the peace, something in peace. I'm going to go travel and do all of this, volunteer work that I couldn't do when I was younger. Or I'm going to go and, do a little bit of art. Maybe I didn't get to do that. Now I can express myself in a new way. Maybe I'll take on another job and do a whole different career in something that I maybe didn't get to do when I was younger, but now I have the opportunity. So it's really a time that a person, if they look forward to it, they shouldn't be saying just how much money is my retirement account? How long can I survive? That's how a lot of people think. How long can I survive with my retirement account? They should be thinking instead is how do I want to survive and what do I want to be doing with my time? And what from myself do I want to give out to others during that time?
So, a lot of studies have actually shown that most individuals experience mental health decline post-retirement. And of course, from your own research, you talk about depression, dementia, frailty. So, what are the keys to mental well-being strategies for aging gracefully?
So, yes, can we become depressed when we're older? Yes, we can. But also think about it that it's treatable also. It's not something that we should expect that it's like if you catch a cold, do you expect to have that for the rest of your life? No, you think, oh, this is going to be a rough week and I plan to get better. So, just like with my grandmother, you can expect that if you have certain illnesses, you'll have a bigger propensity toward experiencing depression. So, it's good to know that beforehand. Heart disease, stroke, cancer, all of those things have a much higher rate of someone experiencing symptoms of depression. If you know that going in, you're going to be looking for those symptoms and catching it early, and then you can get treated, just like my grandmother did. That is an expected sort of thing that could happen. So, should we expect that certain things can happen? Yes, we should expect that we could get a cold next Tuesday. We could, have something that we could catch, but we shouldn't expect it to be a permanent part of our life. So as we get older, there may be certain things that we do experience an illness, maybe a certain form of frailty. I wear reading glasses. I didn't used to wear them. We can expect those things, but we should not expect to have a negative or any kind of a decline in our emotional state. So can you go up, get depressed a little bit, have a little blip and go, you should expect to go back up again, even if you're frail. And I'll give an example. There's somebody that I know, he has COPD. He can barely walk around. And I say, how are you happy? And he says, well, I get to see my grandchildren. I can read. I can do things on the computer. I watch television. I have people over. I can go to lunch. He's happy. And most people assume that your physicality is aligned with your happiness, and it's not. We have to think of emotions as separate.
So, you, the aging expert, You're more like the carer. You care about, the aged and aging. But as someone who studies aging, what are you personally most excited about in your own personal aging journey?
I can say that midlife for me feels super exciting because I'm trying new things. I'm out there and doing all the things that maybe made me scared when I was younger. I think I was 50 when I did my TED Talk. And I'm so afraid of speaking in public. And I said to myself, I'm going to do this. And so I set out and I became a professor at a university so I could practice public speaking. I thought, ooh, they'll never let me off the hook. I'll be around students and I have to be on my game. So then I'll be prepared for the TEDx talk. I've opened so many doors for myself that I felt limitations from earlier on, that when you get older, you don't really care about what the Joneses think about you. You're on your own journey, like you stop caring. And so that allows you to open up a lot more doors. So for me, I can't wait to start another company. I can't wait to go and, try some new traveling that I've always wanted to do. I can't wait to have all kinds of new experiences with new people that I plan to have more meaningful connections with because my bandwidth is opened. I can fit more meaningful connections in now. So that's what I look forward to.
You're somebody who places a lot of premium on impact, and you seek to achieve that through your mentor project. So, what has inspired you to start the mentor project, and how has it evolved since its inception?
Well, it's really evolved. And yes, you're right. I'm feeling very generative. I entered the generativity phase. And when I did that, that's when I really wanted to start the mentor project. So the mentor project was kind of on accident how it happened, but it was me wanting to be generative with other people who wanted to be generative and make impact. Did we think it would be what it is now? We had no idea and we didn't care. We were just like, this seems like fun. So when we started out, the idea was just to get a couple of people to mentor students for free in schools so that students could get in front of people that they may have never seen before. So, how many people have seen, the person who was the father of the network firewall? Not many people. Not many people have seen the person who was the lead on the mission to Mercury. We had all these people that were really cool, but most of us don't get to meet really amazing individuals that have done interesting, world changing things. So the idea was just to get a few people in there. And I was the bus driver of that. I was making it happen. And then what happened was within 6 months, we went from 10 people to 60 people, then to 80, then to 100 mentors, all really amazing individuals who said, I want to give back. So the thought was, imagine the impact we can have now. It was, hundreds. Now it moved to thousands. And so just last year, we were able to give out more than $3 million of mentoring hours to students in 5 countries. We've been in 7 countries altogether, but last year it was just 5. But that's just from people wanting to give back. So to me, impact has shifted. I thought very narrowly because that's what I could see. And now I see, wow, impact can be global and you can make a big footprint all over the world. So now I keep thinking, well, how can I make that bigger? How can I grow that? That to me is where I think of in terms of for myself impact with mentoring and the mentor project and how growing that has just been an organic experience, seeing people saying, I need to give back, but I don't know where or how to do it. And we're the place for that.
So, you've been blessed to have been able to put together some of the global elite level technocratic minds together to mentor for free. What's the magic formula behind this success?
It's generativity. I happen to be someone who, there were the few people who said, hey, I'd like to do this. And I said, hey, I will drive it. And I'm the one that can catch the people, right? They reach out, they say, I'd like to mentor, and I can vet them. We have a process, but really I'm capitalizing on what we're built to do. It would be like if you were in a room of a bunch of babies and they all start to walk. Is that the person that's in the room that made them walk? No, I'm just here. I'm organizing a bunch of people who are doing what they're built to do. And that's what the magic is that we get to see them doing it. No one knew that generativity really was real. This was like an anthropological expedition. And we were able to prove that it, in fact, exists and it works and it's real and it's very impactful. That we are at a stage where we want to give back when we hit midlife. And so we're the first generation where we're really able, and tech helps this, we're able to harness it, to capitalize on it, because all of these mentors don't live in the same place. It just happened that during COVID, when Zoom became popular, we were able to say, okay, I thought we might have to shut down. And then I realized, oh my goodness, this is an opportunity. We have a silver lining here, which is that we can connect people, and we do. We have students in Tanzania, in Kenya, in India. They were in Siberia. We have students from Ukraine. We have students that are from Argentina, all over the world.
Do you have from Nigeria?
We don't have any. We have mentors from Nigeria, but we don't have mentees. You should hook us
Wow.
up with mentees in Nigeria.
Definitely. You
It's
can trust me
free.
on that for free. I will get them.
We are here. We do not have a PR agency. We do not have any marketing team. We have nothing. And we have been able to reach over 100,000 people around the world. And that's just because of the power of, connection and the power of meaningful connections. So I feel like I'm the bus driver. And that's really where, if you were to say, where did the power come from? It comes from all the individuals, and I'm the wrangler. That's it.
You are the bus driver. I am a new passenger. So I'm bringing on board new mentees from Nigeria. After the podcast, we can talk about, arranging that.
Good.
I think it's a good way to segue to my next question to you, and it is about reminiscing the impact. You have impacted and influenced a lot of people's lives positively, but can you share one story that deeply moved you when it comes to influencing a mentee's life positively?
I'm going to give you, because we're a mentor focused organization, I'm going to give you one. There are so many, but I'm going to give you just one because this person impacted this one human being. His name is Justin Thompson. He's the senior creative artist for Schultz Creative Studios. So if you've ever seen Snoopy, he's the one who's trademarked to draw Snoopy, right? So he said, I really want to get in front of kids and teach them cartooning, because cartooning is something that shows emotion, and really you can express emotion through cartoons. And he was really curious to be able to teach this because it's an art that's kind of getting lost now that we have animation and other things. So he happened to put that out there. And someone from Reach Sharati, her name is Laura, said, hey, we'd love to have a mentor come to Sharati, Tanzania. We have a school there that's never had cartooning before, and it would be really lovely. It's a very small, remote village. And Justin said, I'll go. And I was like, okay. So he went, and it was a school of 500 students, but he got there and he arrived and he went from California. It was a really long trip. He went and he stayed in someone's house there, and he was shocked because he had the 15 students that he had and they were really into it, but he also was able to impact the entire community because he did a giant mural on the school wall. The school wall didn't have any art on it, and so he put this big mural up there. So people from the community, moms were holding babies, and Men were coming out and making the scaffolding for him to stand. People were coming out and mixing the paint, and the kids were running around. It was so unbelievable. Everybody was really into it, and we sent supplies so all the kids could keep doing art throughout the year. And they would meet with him on Zoom every day. And he got up at 4 a.m. to meet once, I think it was once a week, until he went back again the following year. And this time, kids who had him the previous year came running over to him to talk to him. And then he had 15 new students. And then he went back and he touched up the wall and added more things to it. And then he went to Flatbush, Brooklyn, which is in New York City, and went to teach kids there the same way he was teaching the kids in Tanzania, and exactly the same reaction from the kids from completely different parts of the world. This one man changed the lives of not only the few students that he taught, but then the teachers, because he taught them. And then he changed the lives of the community. They now have a whole new way of doing art, and they have a whole new look to their community, and they're all interested in it. They now have a new part of their curriculum. Now he goes to a completely different area in Brooklyn. And this one man has now changed that school. And so this one guy has a footprint that's so deep. But how many of us would have ever thought about that? But one man changed a community, and he's continuing to change communities by meeting with the students throughout the year, doing curricula, mentoring them when they have questions. To see the pictures from when they start to when they end is magical, absolutely magical. And to see the emotion that is in the pictures, that to me was very moving, because we often think of art as an afterthought, that art and those things are the things that we say, okay, don't spend too much time on that. Spend it on studies that are going to get you somewhere. And everybody that gets exposed to something new that they've never been exposed to has an outlet that maybe they're not going to use it right then and there, but they now know that there's another outlet that they might use later, or that maybe they will go into art. It was just really moving to me to see the impact that he had on two communities.
Wow, that is so brilliant. It's awesome. Such a wonderful story. Live for these kind of moments. I cherish them. I love to see people leave their footprint on the sands of time.
Yeah.
And speaking of scaling mentorship globally, you have been able to achieve that with your organization by leveraging on tech. So, how can businesses, organizations, and individuals incorporate mentorship on a larger scale?
Everyone should think of mentorship as something that they should be engaging in and adding to their workplace, to their schools, everywhere. Because with technology, you can do Zoom meetings. You don't have to have people meeting in person. There are great ways to engage in mentorship over Zoom. It's free. If you already have, whatever your account is, if it's Microsoft Teams, if it's Zoom, whatever it is, you're not paying extra if people are meeting over it. So set up programs that are going to make people want to get together. It can be a virtual lunch. It can be whatever you want to be. And I'll give you an example of this. We did not set up to do this in any kind of a way that would lead to mentorship. But every Friday, and so any company can do this, every Friday we have something that we now call Fridays with Fred. Fred, one of our mentors, leads a Friday gathering, and everybody just comes at lunchtime or breakfast time or wherever it could be dinner time, wherever you are. You come on the screen, and it's for the mentors. And now we let mentees in too. But you just come and chat and meet each other. So there are introductions that go around, and people get to talk about topics. Every now and then somebody will speak about what their expertise is, and everybody gets to learn from that. Anyway, this is something that's done from that informal group that we never thought of anything other than, the mentors should meet each other. We've had companies formed, with people who have nothing in common with each other that you would have never put together. So a film producer and a labor law attorney got together and they formed a nonprofit. We've had people write books together. We've had people write journal articles together. People do research together. We've had all kinds of great friendships that have occurred from this. So if a company puts together things that are built to make meaningful connections within their employees, it leads to mentorship, because we've been able to see these very different mentors come together to work on books that you were like, what? Or to create a company that we were like, what? All over and over and over again. And it's because you have two very different thinking people who come together, and then there's explosive impact. That's just lateral mentoring that was happening like wildfire. So companies can do that. It's free. It costs nothing, but the impact is huge. There's no reason people shouldn't be doing it everywhere.
Hmm. Speaking of, is it Friday with Fred or Fred?
Fridays
Yeah,
with
yeah, Fridays with Fred. You just reminded me. I do have a friend. His name is Friday, and I think his middle name is Fred. What a coincidence. And of
yeah,
course he called me yesterday, and that's why, it's just fresh in my head. Friday, Fred Alegbe. Big shout out to you, brother. Love and respect to you. You're making impact in America. And coincidentally, he's actually in America. Maybe I should link him up.
you got it.
He should be attending Fridays with Fred.
He's the OG Friday with Fred.
I'm telling you, he needs to see it. When you see this, brother, please go join the movement. You need to be a mentor. He's a generous guy, and of course, with great sense of humor. So, he'll make a good addition to the mentorship program. So we need a call to action, right? So how can the viewers, the audience of this podcast get involved with the mentor project as mentors or mentees?
Well, first, there should be nothing stopping any student at any age. We take kindergarten through graduate school. If you want a mentor, it's free. Like, click the button, become a mentee on our website, which is mentorproject.org. It's easy, it's free. And if you want to become a mentor, or if you'd like to donate to one of the programs to make it so that it can continue, just click the contact us button and let us know. We are always looking for people to volunteer. We're looking for people to get involved in the philanthropy side of it. We're looking for other mentors. So contact us. We're really eager to hear from you.
Interesting. So in the description to the podcast, I am going to add the website a link, and of course your social media links as well in the description. So it's almost time for you to go. Let's play a light-hearted wrap-up game.
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you, quick fire questions, and just answer as brief and as genuinely as you can. Are you ready to rumble?
Yes.
Okay, let's go. So, if you could have coffee with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
Marie Curie, because I think she was one
Oh,
cool lady. I mean, she's had a couple of Nobel Prizes, and she just sort of quietly made change in our world. And I respect that.
interesting. I was once involved in the Mercury charity here in London.
Oh, cool.
So I remember during my time at KPMG UK, we used to go on like a 5 kilometer, 10 kilometer walk to raise money for charity, and Mercury did partner with us. It's a really fantastic charity, and her impact is long lasting.
Yeah.
And yeah, so agent superpower. If agent came with a superpower, what would yours be?
I think I'm a really good connector. I can connect people, and I can make them meaningfully connected. That's something I'm good at.
I hope you're able to connect me to my helpers. Whoa. So, okay, your go-to self-care routine. What's one daily habit that keeps you energized and motivated?
Coffee.
Whoa, no wonder you want to have coffee with Mercury.
Yeah.
Okay, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
That's an easy one.
Okay, so one book or movie everyone should experience.
Everyone should experience the Alistair Sim version of Charles Dickens' A Christmas Carol, Scrooge. That's
Hmm,
what they should, because that is an exact example of how generativity works.
interesting. Okay, I'll try. I'll try. I'm not a movie person, and I'm very open about it. I grew up as a nerd, and I think I'm still a nerd, but I'll try.
Right.
Okay, so yeah, I basically only watch movies on based off very, very strong recommendations. And I think this one is a strong recommendation,
Yeah.
so it
If
comes
you
in
want to see
clutch.
how generativity works, this one is the exact one you should watch.
Okay, thank you very much for that recommendation. And of course, finally, do you have any final words you could give on one piece of advice you can give to anybody feeling stuck in their career or personal life? What would that advice be?
You should look to your left and you look to your right, because you're looking at someone who can probably mentor you, and you will probably be able to find somebody right in your inner circle who is able to get you out of that rut.
Hmm. Okay, so I hope our audience are able to connect with the great work that you do. What are the social media platforms they can connect with you on?
LinkedIn, and I'm now on Instagram and TikTok. So those places. We do have a mentor project Facebook page, but those are the main places.
Okay, interesting. What is the Instagram handle? So I am going to collaborate with your Instagram handle
I
once this
think
is out.
that one it's Deborah Heiser, and I think it's Deborah Heiser TMP for them.
Deborah. Okay, I'm gonna follow you right away. And of course, like I always love to say, gratitude is good attitude, and the SI unit of measuring life is time. So when somebody shares their time with you, they share their life with you. Thank you very much for sharing your time and your life in a generative way, and you are that paradigm of generativity. Thank you very much. God bless you. Nothing but love and respect for you.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Do you want to leave a shout out to anybody before you leave?
I want to shout out to every mentor out there and every grandma out there who passes on culture, wisdom, and values to the next generation.
Oh, wow. No better words have ever been said in the history of mankind and womankind. Well, so guys, if you have watched till the end, please, like, subscribe, comment, share the love, help us grow. And of course, I promise I will keep working tirelessly to bring fantastic individuals like Deborah to share wonderful insights, hindsight, and foresight with you guys. And for me, it is love and respect. God bless you guys.